The penthouse was silent, save for the soft hum of the city 30 floors below. Ethan Caldwell stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, his reflection sharp against the Manhattan skyline. His tailored suit, crisp even at 8 p.m., couldn't hide the exhaustion in his eyes. He was a man who had everything except time. Time for his daughter, Sophie, who was upstairs, probably staring at her iPad instead of sleeping. He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. That's when he heard it, a faint rustle from the nursery. He crossed the sleek living room, his polished shoes clicking on the marble floor. The nursery door was ajar, a sliver of light spilling out. Inside, Sophie sat cross-legged on the rug, her blonde curls bouncing as she giggled. Across from her was the new nanny, Lena Harper, her hands smudged with charcoal, sketching on a pad. Ethan froze. On the paper was a man in a tuxedo, his jawline sharp, eyes piercing. It was him, or close enough to make his pulse skip. Lena glanced up, her hazel eyes widening. She flipped the sketchbook shut, her cheeks flushing. "It's just something I was doodling," she mumbled, avoiding his gaze. Ethan's brow furrowed. That didn't look like just anything. His voice was low, curious, not accusing. Sophie, oblivious, tugged at Lena's sleeve. "Show him, Lena. It's so good." Lena's hands trembled slightly as she tucked the sketchbook into her bag. "It's nothing, really. Just a habit." Her voice was soft, almost too soft, like she was used to fading into the background. Ethan wanted to press her, but Sophie yawned, breaking the moment. "Bedtime, kiddo," he said, scooping his daughter up. As he carried her to bed, he couldn't shake the image of that sketch. Why had Lena drawn him? And why did her quiet presence tug at something deep inside him? Lena Harper wasn't supposed to be here, in a billionaire's penthouse, caring for his daughter. She was 32, a single mother who'd spent the last 5 years scraping by in a small Brooklyn apartment with her son, Noah. Her life was simple. Work, Noah, and the sketchbook she carried everywhere. Art was her escape, a way to process a world that hadn't always been kind. When the nanny agency called with an urgent job for Ethan Caldwell, she'd hesitated. High-profile clients meant scrutiny, and Lena preferred to stay unnoticed. But the pay was triple her usual rate, and Noah's school fees were due. She'd said yes. Now, as she tidied the nursery, her heart still raced from Ethan's gaze. She hadn't meant to draw him. It just happened. His face, strong, guarded, with a hint of sadness, had slipped onto the page while she and Sophie played. She'd always sketched people who intrigued her, but this felt different. Dangerous, even. Ethan was her boss, a man whose world was light years from hers. She couldn't afford to be careless. Downstairs, Ethan poured himself a coffee, the machine hissing in the quiet kitchen. He'd hired Lena on a whim after the last nanny quit, citing Sophie's moods. His daughter was 7, bright but stubborn, her grief over her mother's passing 2 years ago manifesting in tantrums and silence. Ethan wasn't much better. Losing Claire had gutted him, leaving him to juggle a tech empire and a daughter he barely knew how to reach. Lena, with her calm demeanor and art supplies, had been a gamble. But Sophie liked her. That was something. He glanced at the staircase, wondering about the sketch. Lena was a puzzle, reserved, yet her eyes held stories she didn't share. He'd caught her humming to Sophie, her voice like a lullaby, and seen her braid his daughter's hair with a patience he envied. But that drawing, it felt personal. Too personal for a nanny he'd known for 2 weeks. The next morning, Ethan was up at dawn, already on calls with investors in Tokyo. Sophie was at the kitchen island, picking at pancakes Lena had made. "Can we draw again today?" Sophie asked, her blue eyes bright. Lena smiled, setting a plate of fruit down. "Sure, but only if you finish at least one pancake." Ethan, half listening from his office, paused. Sophie hadn't smiled like that in months. He stepped into the kitchen, loosening his tie. "Morning, Sophie." "Lena." His voice was casual, but his eyes lingered on Lena, searching for a crack in her quiet armor. "Morning, Mr. Caldwell," Lena said, her tone polite but distant. She busied herself with dishes, her dark hair falling over one shoulder. "Call me Ethan," he said, leaning against the counter. "Mr. Caldwell makes me feel like my father." Lena nodded, but didn't meet his eyes. Sophie, however, was all chatter. Lena's teaching me to draw stars. She says they're like stories in the sky. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Stories, huh? You'll have to show me sometime. He looked at Lena, hoping for a reaction, but she just wiped her hands on a towel and excused herself to grab Sophie's school bag. The days blurred into a routine. Lena arrived at 7 a.m., handled Sophie's mornings, and stayed late when Ethan's meetings ran over. She was efficient, kind, but guarded. Ethan noticed the small things. How she'd leave a thermos of coffee on his desk when he worked late, or how she'd slip a doodle into Sophie's lunchbox, a tiny act that made his daughter beam. He found himself watching her, curious about the woman behind the sketches. One evening, after Sophie was asleep, Ethan found Lena in the living room, organizing toys. "You don't have to do that," he said, leaning in the doorway. "You're off the clock." Lena straightened, brushing her hands on her jeans. "I don't mind. Keeps me busy." He hesitated, then asked, "The sketch, the one from the other night. Why me?" Her breath caught, but she recovered quickly. "It wasn't you. Just someone I imagined." Her voice was too quick, her eyes darting to the floor. Ethan didn't buy it, but he let it go. "You're good, you know. With Sophie. She's happier since you started." Lena's lips curved slightly. "She's a great kid. Just needs someone to listen." He nodded, feeling a pang. He hadn't been listening, not really. Work consumed him. Meetings, deals, the constant pressure to stay on top. Lena's words stung, but they also stirred something. Gratitude, maybe, or something deeper. The first conflict came a week later. Ethan's mother, Vivian, swept into the penthouse unannounced, her designer coat trailing like a royal cape. "Ethan, darling, we need to talk about Sophie's school," she said, barely glancing at Lena, who was helping Sophie with homework. Ethan tensed. Vivian had opinions on everything. Sophie's education, his parenting, even his choice of nanny. "Mother, this isn't a good time." "It's never a good time with you," Vivian snapped, her eyes narrowing on Lena. "And who is this? Another temporary fix." Lena stood, her face neutral. "I'm Lena, the nanny. Nice to meet you." Vivian's smile was thin, charming. "But Sophie needs stability, Ethan. Not some artist type." Lena excused herself, her jaw tight. Ethan followed her to the kitchen, apologetic. "She's just protective. Ignore her." "It's fine," Lena said, but her voice was clipped. "I'm used to it." He wanted to ask what she meant, but his phone buzzed, a crisis at the office. He left, promising to talk later, but the moment stuck with him. Lena's resilience, her quiet strength, was starting to chip away at his walls. The next day, Ethan overheard Sophie crying in her room. He found Lena there, kneeling beside her, holding her hand. "It's okay to miss her," Lena was saying softly. "You can talk about your mom whenever you want." Sophie sniffled. "Dad doesn't. He gets sad." Lena's eyes softened. "Maybe he's just figuring out how to talk about it." Ethan's chest tightened. He backed away, not wanting to intrude. Later, he found Lena in the nursery, sketching again. This time, it was Sophie, laughing under a starry sky. "You're good at this," he said, startling her. She closed the sketchbook. "It's just a hobby." "It's more than that," he said, stepping closer. "You see people. Really see them." Lena looked at him then, her guard slipping for a moment. Not everyone wants to be seen. Their eyes locked, and for a second, the air felt charged. Then Sophie called from her room, breaking the spell. Lena hurried off, leaving Ethan with a question he couldn't shake. What was Lena hiding? As weeks passed, Ethan found himself seeking Lena out. Small conversations over coffee, shared glances when Sophie laughed. One night, after a long day, he found her on the balcony, staring at the city lights. "You okay?" he asked, joining her. She nodded, but her hands gripped the railing. "Just thinking about my son, Noah. He's with my sister tonight. I miss him." Ethan leaned closer, surprised. "You have a son?" "Yeah, he's 5. My everything." Her voice cracked, and she looked away. He wanted to ask more, but something stopped him. Instead, he said, "You're doing a lot for him. And for Sophie. That's not nothing." Lena's eyes met his, soft and unguarded. "Thanks, Ethan." They stood there, the city humming below, and Ethan felt something shift. Not just curiosity, but a pull, a need to know her, to share her burdens. But before he could say more, his phone rang, pulling him back to his world. As he answered, Lena slipped back inside, leaving behind a sketch on the table, a man and a little girl holding hands under the stars. Ethan's heart skipped. It was him and Sophie, and it felt like a promise. The penthouse glowed with the soft amber of evening, but Ethan Caldwell's mind was elsewhere. The sketch Lena had left on the balcony, a man and a little girl under a starry sky, sat on his desk, tucked beside a stack of contracts. He hadn't mentioned it to her, but every time he passed it, his chest tightened. It wasn't just a drawing, it was what it meant. Lena saw him, not as the billionaire CEO plastered across Forbes, but as a father, flawed and trying. And that scared him as much as it drew him in. Lena, meanwhile, was in the nursery, helping Sophie braid a friendship bracelet. Her hands moved deftly, weaving bright threads, but her thoughts wandered to Ethan's voice last night on the balcony. Low, kind like he actually cared. She shook her head. He was her boss. A man like him didn't belong in her world of late-night shifts and second-hand clothes. Yet, when their eyes met, she felt something stir, a warmth she hadn't allowed herself since Noah's father walked away. "Miss Lena, you're daydreaming." Sophie giggled, tugging the bracelet. Lena blinked, forcing a smile. "Caught me. Let's finish this for your friend, okay?" Sophie nodded, but her face fell. "I don't have many friends at school. They think I'm weird because I don't talk about Mom." Lena's heart ached. She knew that kind of loneliness, hers from a childhood of moving between foster homes, never quite fitting in. "You're not weird, Sophie. You're special. And sometimes the right people take a little time to find you." Sophie hugged her, and Lena held her tight, wishing she could shield this girl from the world's sharp edges. She didn't notice Ethan in the doorway, watching, his expression soft but unreadable. The next morning, Ethan was in his office, staring at a photo of Claire, his late wife, when Lena knocked. "Sophie's at school," she said, setting a thermos of coffee on his desk. "I'm heading out unless you need me." He glanced up, noticing the faint shadows under her eyes. "Late night. Noah was up with a fever," she said, her voice steady but tired. "He's fine now, just kept me on my toes." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "You're a good mom. I can tell." He hesitated, then added, "I'm not sure I'm a good dad." Lena's brow furrowed. "You are. Sophie adores you. She just needs you to show up a little more." Her honesty hit like a quiet punch. He nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm trying. It's just work. It never stops." "I get it," Lena said, softer now. "But kids don't care about empires. They care about you being there." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the room felt smaller, the air heavy with unspoken things. Then Lena's phone buzzed, a text from her sister about Noah. She excused herself, leaving Ethan with her words echoing in his head. The conflict came swiftly, like a storm rolling in. Ethan's company was launching a new AI platform, and the pressure was crushing. Late nights bled into early mornings, and he barely saw Sophie, let alone Lena. One evening, he came home to find Vivian, his mother, in the living room. Her lips pursed as she spoke to Lena. "Really, dear, you should stick to childcare," Vivian was saying, her voice dripping with condescension. "Ethan needs someone professional, not a hobbyist sketching in corners." Lena stood tall, her voice calm but firm. "I'm here for Sophie, Mrs. Caldwell. That's what matters." Ethan stepped in, his jaw tight. "Mother, enough. Lena's doing a great job." Vivian raised an eyebrow. "Is she? Or are you just distracted by her charm?" The words stung, and Lena's face flushed. She grabbed her bag and left without a word, brushing past Ethan. He followed her to the elevator. "Lena, wait. She's out of line." "I'm sorry." Lena pressed the elevator button, her eyes on the floor. "It's fine. I've heard worse. I just need to get home to Noah." "Let me drive you," Ethan offered, surprising himself. She shook her head. "I'm okay." "Really?" The doors closed, and she was gone. The next day, Ethan found Sophie in the nursery, unusually quiet. "Where's Lena?" she asked, her voice small. "She'll be back tomorrow," Ethan said, hoping it was true. He'd texted Lena to apologize, But her reply was brief. All good. See you tomorrow. It wasn't enough. He needed to fix this. When Lena arrived the next morning, Ethan was waiting in the kitchen. Can we talk? He asked, gesturing to the coffee he'd made, her favorite, black with a hint of cinnamon, something he'd noticed she liked. Lena hesitated. Then, Saturday, what's up? I don't want you to feel disrespected here, he said. My mother's wrong about you. Sophie's happier because of you. And I'm grateful. Lena's guard softened, her lips curving slightly. Thanks, Ethan. It means a lot. He slid the sketch of him and Sophie across the table. This means a lot, too. You didn't have to do this. She looked at the drawing, her fingers tracing the edges. I just see things. People. You and Sophie. You're trying to find each other. It's beautiful. Ethan's throat tightened. You make it sound simple. It's not, she said, meeting his eyes. But it's worth it. The turning point came a week later. Ethan was at a gala, surrounded by investors and flashing cameras, but his mind was on Sophie. She'd had a rough day at school, a fight with a friend, and Lena had stayed late to comfort her. He left early, something he hadn't done in years, and came home to find Lena and Sophie on the couch, watching a movie. Sophie was asleep, her head on Lena's lap. Lena looked up, surprised. You're back early. Yeah, Ethan said, loosening his tie. Thought I'd check on you too. Lena smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She's okay. Just needed a little extra love tonight. Ethan sat beside her, close enough to feel the warmth of her presence. You're good at that. The extra love part. Lena laughed softly, careful not to wake Sophie. Comes with being a mom, I guess. He studied her, the way her hands rested gently on Sophie's hair, the quiet strength in her. Tell me about Noah, he said, surprising her. She hesitated, then spoke. He's my world. Funny, stubborn, loves dinosaurs. His dad didn't stick around. So it's just us. I'm sorry, Ethan said, meaning it. That's hard. Lena shrugged, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of pain. You do what you have to. They sat in silence, the movie's soft glow filling the room. Ethan felt an urge to reach for her hand, to close the distance between them, but he didn't. Not yet. The climax hit unexpectedly. The next evening, Ethan was sorting through old files in his office when he found a photo tucked in a forgotten folder. It was him, younger, at a charity art show years ago, standing beside a woman with hazel eyes and a shy smile. His heart stopped. It was Lena. He grabbed the photo and found her in the nursery, packing up for the day. Lena, he said, his voice urgent. Where's this from? She froze, her eyes locked on the photo. Where did you get that? It was in my files. Lena, this is you. With me. Years ago. Her face paled, and she sank into a chair. I didn't think you'd remember. Remember what? Ethan pressed, his pulse racing. We met before. Lena took a shaky breath. It was a fundraiser. I was an art student volunteering. You were kind. You bought one of my sketches. Said it reminded you of home. Ethan's mind reeled. He vaguely recalled that night. A rare moment of connection before Claire, before his world became a whirlwind of deals and grief. Why didn't you say anything? I didn't think it mattered, Lena whispered. You were this big shot. I was just a kid with a sketchbook. And now I'm just the nanny. You're not just anything, Ethan said, stepping closer. Lena, you're changing everything. For Sophie. For me. Her eyes searched his, vulnerable, hopeful. Ethan. Sophie's voice called from the hallway, interrupting. Lena stood, brushing past him, but not before their hands grazed, sending a jolt through them both. As she left, Ethan clutched the photo, knowing something had shifted. They weren't just boss and nanny anymore. There was history, a thread pulling them together, and he wasn't ready to let it go. The penthouse felt different now, like the air held a quiet charge. Ethan Caldwell stood in his office, the old photo from the art show still in his hand. Lena's face in it, younger, unguarded, haunted him. That night, years ago, she'd been a fleeting spark in his life, a moment of warmth before his world hardened into boardrooms and loss. Now, she was here, in his home, weaving herself into his and Sophie's lives. He wanted to talk to her, to understand why she kept their past a secret, but every time he tried, something stopped him. Fear, maybe, of what it would mean to cross that line. Lena, meanwhile, was in the nursery, folding Sophie's clothes with mechanical precision. Her mind was a mess. Ethan's discovery of the photo had cracked open a door she'd kept locked for years. She'd been 22 at that art show, scraping by, pouring her heart into sketches no one noticed. Until Ethan. He'd bought her drawing, a simple scene of a boy and his father under a starry sky, and said it reminded him of home. His kindness had lingered in her memory, a rare light in a tough year. But now, standing in his world, she felt exposed. He wasn't just the man from that night anymore. He was her boss, Sophie's father, and someone whose quiet attention made her heart race in ways she couldn't afford. Lena, Sophie's voice pulled her back. The girl stood in the doorway, clutching a stuffed dinosaur. "Can Noah come over sometime? I want to show him my toys." Lena smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind Sophie's ear. "Maybe. He'd love your dinosaurs. He's got a whole collection." Sophie's eyes lit up. "Really? That's so cool." Lena's chest warmed. Sophie's enthusiasm reminded her of Noah, and the thought of her son steadied her. She had to keep things professional with Ethan, for Noah's sake. For her own. The days that followed were a delicate dance. Ethan found excuses to be around Lena, helping with Sophie's homework, lingering over coffee in the kitchen. Lena, for her part, kept her distance, her responses polite but guarded. But the tension was there, in the way their eyes caught too long, in the brush of their hands when passing a mug or a book. Sophie, blissfully unaware, filled the gaps with chatter, her bond with Lena growing stronger. One afternoon, Ethan came home early to find Lena and Sophie in the living room, painting on a huge canvas. Bright colors streaked their hands, and Sophie was laughing, a sound that hit Ethan like sunlight. Lena looked up, her face softening. "We got carried away," she said, wiping paint from her cheek. Ethan grinned, loosening his tie. "Looks like a masterpiece. Join us," Sophie demanded, thrusting a brush at him. He hesitated, then took it, sitting cross-legged on the floor. Lena handed him a jar of blue paint, their fingers grazing. "Careful," she teased. "You're in a suit." "I'll survive," he said, his voice low, his eyes on hers. For a moment, it was just them, the world fading to the hum of Sophie's giggles. But reality crept back. That evening, Ethan's sister, Rachel, called, her voice sharp. "Mother's planning to enroll Sophie in a new school. She thinks your nanny's too informal." "I don't disagree." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Sophie's happy. That's what matters." "Is it?" Rachel pressed. "Or are you letting this nanny distract you? You barely know her, Ethan." He hung up, frustrated, but her words lingered. He didn't know Lena, not really. And yet, he felt like he did, like her sketches and quiet kindness revealed more than words ever could. The real test came a week later. Lena arrived at the penthouse looking shaken, her eyes red-rimmed. Ethan noticed instantly. "What's wrong?" he asked, setting aside his laptop. She hesitated, then said, "Noah's school. They're raising tuition. I might need to take on extra work." Ethan's stomach twisted. The thought of Lena leaving, even part-time, felt like losing something vital. "Let me help," he said, the words out before he could stop them. "I can cover it." Lena's eyes flashed. "No, I don't need charity, Ethan. I'll figure it out." "It's not charity," he said, stepping closer. "You're family to Sophie. To us." The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Lena's breath caught, but she shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. I'm just doing my job." "You're more than that," he said, his voice raw. "You know you are." She looked at him, her walls crumbling, but before she could respond, Sophie burst in, holding a drawing. "Look, it's us." The paper showed 3 figures, Ethan, Sophie, and Lena, under a starry sky, holding hands. Ethan's throat tightened. Lena's eyes glistened, but she smiled at Sophie. "It's beautiful, kiddo." That night, Lena stayed late, helping Sophie with a school project. Ethan found her in the kitchen afterward, washing dishes. "You don't have to do that," he said, echoing their earlier conversations. She laughed softly, drying her hands. "Habit." He stepped closer, close enough to smell the faint lavender of her shampoo. "Lena, about earlier. I'm in it. You're not just the nanny. Not to me." Her eyes met his, vulnerable and searching. Ethan, I can't. This is complicated. My life's a mess. Noah, my past. I'm not who you think I am. Then tell me who you are, he said, his voice gentle but firm. I want to know. All of it. Lena's lips parted, but she hesitated. That night at the art show, I was barely holding it together. You were the first person who saw me, really saw me. But now, I'm scared. Scared of what this means, of messing it up. Ethan reached for her hand, his touch tentative. You're not messing anything up. You're making things better. For Sophie. For me. Her fingers curled around his, and for a moment, they stood there, the world quiet except for the hum of the city below. Then Lena pulled back, her voice barely a whisper. I need time, Ethan. He nodded, letting her go. Take all the time you need. The resolution came quietly, as the best moments do. A month later, Ethan invited Lena and Noah to a small picnic in Central Park, just the four of them. Sophie and Noah ran ahead, chasing each other through the grass, their laughter echoing. Ethan and Lena sat on a blanket, watching, a thermos of coffee between them. Noah's a good kid, Ethan said, watching the boy tackle Sophie in a playful hug. Lena smiled, her eyes soft. He is. So's Sophie. They sat in comfortable silence, the weight of the past weeks settling. Ethan had backed off, giving Lena space, but he'd made changes, cutting back on late nights, reading bedtime stories to Sophie, even sketching with her, inspired by Lena's quiet creativity. Lena, too, had opened up, sharing small pieces of her life, her love for art, her struggles as a single mom, her dreams for Noah. I found another sketch, Ethan said, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. It was the one from the art show, The Boy and Father Under the Stars. Kept it all these years. Didn't know why until now. Lena's breath hitched. You kept it. Yeah, he said, his voice low. It felt like home. Her eyes glistened, and she reached for his hand, this time holding on. Ethan, I don't know what this is or where it's going, but I'm here. For Sophie. For you. He squeezed her hand, a quiet promise. That's enough for now. They watched the kids play, the sun dipping low, casting golden light over the park. Life wasn't perfect. Ethan still had his company to run. Lena had Noah's school to worry about, and their worlds were still miles apart. But in that moment, with Sophie and Noah laughing and their hands entwined, it felt possible. A future, together, built on small acts of kindness and the courage to try again. As they packed up, Sophie ran over, holding out a daisy chain. For you, Lena, she said, then grinned at Ethan. And you, Dad. Lena laughed, placing the chain on her head like a crown. Ethan did the same, earning a giggle from Noah. They walked back to the car, a makeshift family, not quite defined but real all the same.